The Battle of Koh Chang took place on the 17th of January 1941 during the Franco-Thai War, and resulted in a victory by the French Navy over the Royal Thai Navy. During the battle, a flotilla of French warships attacked a smaller force of Thai vessels, including a coastal defense ship. In the end, 2 Thai ships were sunk and 1 was heavily damaged. Within a month of the engagement, the Vichy French and the Thais negotiated a peace which ended the war. Despite the fall of France in 1940, the Vichy government still held sway over France's colonial territories abroad. One of these territories was French Indochina, what we know today as Vietnam and Cambodia. With the defeat of mainland France, obvious doubt was thrown over her ability to defend the far-flung outposts of the empire. French Indochina held a particular attraction to her neighbor to the west, Thailand. In late 1940, the Thais began a series of cross-border attacks by troops and aircraft against the French possessions, aimed at annexing those parts of French Indochina which the French were unable to hold on to. These attacks tended to concentrate in the coastal regions of Cambodia, to the west of Saigon. The Thais naturally saw themselves as filling a power vacuum which had been created by deflating French colonial interests. The French, however, had other ideas, and a state of war was assumed between Vichy France and Thailand, then still often referred to as Siam. Since the main thrust of the Thai assaults had been along the coast, the French considered a naval operation against the invaders, although there was grave concern over strengths of the Thai armed forces which would oppose such a mission. The Royal Thai Navy could in no way be regarded as a pushover. A number of new vessels had recently been delivered from Japan and Italy. The major units of the fleet are listed in Table 1, and included 2 Japanese-built armored coast defense vessels which displaced 2,500 tons and carried 8-inch guns. 2 older British-built armored gunboats with 6-inch guns. 12 torpedo boats and 4 submarines. In addition, the Royal Thai Air Force had in its inventory over 140 aircraft, including relatively modern Mitsubishi Ki-30 light bombers, which saw extensive service against the French. These aircraft in themselves were quite capable of causing severe damage to any French naval mission which may be mounted. Other less capable aircraft in the Thai inventory included 25 Curtiss Hawk 75N, 70 Ford Corsair biplanes, 9 B-10 bombers and several Avro 504 trainers. Despite the strengths of the Thai forces, the French Governor-General of Indochina and Commander-in-Chief Naval Forces, Admiral Jean Decaux, decided that the naval mission should go ahead. A small squadron, the Groupe Occasionnel, was formed on 9th December 1940 at Cam Ranh Bay, near Saigon, under the command of Captain D'Ivesa Berenger. The squadron consisted of the light cruiser Lamed Piquet, the colonial sloops Dumont d'Urville and Amiral Chana, and the older sloops Tahir and Man. There was no air cover to speak of, apart from 8 Lockheed 130 seaplanes based at Ream which provided reconnaissance. Additional scouting was provided by 3 coastal survey craft, and intelligence gleaned from the local fishermen. Berenger's squadron began training maneuvers in Cam Ranh Bay shortly after coming together. Early in the new year, on January 13, 1941, Admiral Decaux formally requested Berenger to send the squadron against the Thais to act in support of a land offensive planned for the 16th. This operation was intended to throw back Thai forces which had been advancing along the coast. Because of the disparate speeds of the French ships, Berenger sent the slower sloops on ahead, whilst he remained in Saigon to complete the final element of the plan. Several options were currently being prepared. The Admiralty in Paris, having recently given its formal blessing to the use of naval forces in support of the army. The final planning meeting of the 13th saw an immediate delay in the execution of the operation for 24 hours. With the plans finalized, Berenger sailed in Lamed Piquet, the delay in the start of the operation allowing him to refuel at Captain St. Jack's before the rendezvous with the slower ships at 16 o'clock in the afternoon on the 15th, 20 miles north of Paulo Condor. The orders from Admiral de Kalks were clear and simple: seek out and destroy the Siamese naval forces from Sattahip to the Cambodian frontier. On the evening of the 15th, following a final conference on board the flagship, the squadron weighed anchor at 21:15 and closed the Thai coast at 14 knots, the best speed of the sloops. The French ships remained undetected as they entered the Gulf of Siam, but their quarry was not so lucky. The Loya 130s from Ream had completed a sweep of the coast from Trat to Sattahip. They had located one coast defense ship and 3 torpedo boats at Koh Chang, and 1 gunboat, 4 torpedo boats and 2 submarines at Sattahip. Their report was sent to Marine headquarters in Saigon, who retransmitted the report to the Lamet Piquet. Berenger considered his options in the light of this intelligence, and opted for a dawn attack on Koh Chang. He discounted an attack on Sattahip because it was not possible for the sloops to reach the port until later in the day, by which time the Thai force was likely to have been alerted to the French presence and the element of surprise would be lost. In addition, there was doubt as to the contribution which the harbour defences at Sattahip could make. Finally, the force at Koh Chang, although formidable, was the weaker of the two, and was thought to offer the best chance for victory. Berenger's plan of attack was as follows. The squadron would approach at dawn from the southwest. Because the anchorage at Koh Chang was surrounded by islands and islets, many of which were over 200 meters high, the squadron would break up and use the cover of the islands to concentrate fire on portions of the Thai squadron whilst covering all the avenues of escape. The easternmost channel was regarded as the most likely route by which a breakout would be made. This was the most suitable route, and was also the area in which the Recce report had placed the largest Thai ships. The Lamet Piquet would head to the eastern side of the anchorage to block this route whilst the colonial sloops blocked the center and pounded the Thai ships there. The smaller French ships would concentrate to the west. French squadron closed on the anchorage at 5:30 on the 17th. At 5:45 they split into the 3 groups as planned, the Lamet Piquet heading for the eastern part of the anchorage, Dumont d'Urville and Amir al-Chana continuing to the central position, and the Tahir and Mon heading for the western side. Conditions were perfect, the weather was fine, the seas calm and almost flat. Sunrise was due at 6:30, and the scene was lit only by the first rays of light on the horizon, and by the dim moonlight. A final aerial reconnaissance of the target area had been arranged using one of the Ream-based Loya 130s. Lamet Piquet carried 2 such aircraft, but these could not be launched due to catapult problems. At 6:05 the Loya 130 overflew the anchorage, and reported to coastal defense ships. This came as a nasty surprise to the French. Previous reports led them to believe that only one of the large defense ships was present, but during the night the Thongeri had arrived to relieve the Siau Thea, which was to return to Sattahip later that day. Once their presence had been passed to the Lamet Piquet, the aircraft attempted an attack of its own using bombs, but was forced off by a heavy barrage of AA fire. The effect of this mission was double-edged. The French were now aware that they faced both the Thai heavy units, but the element of surprise had been wasted, and there was still 30 minutes to go until sunrise. Caught napping by the oncoming French, the Thais desperately began to raise steam and make preparations for slipping their anchors. The coastal defense ships had an advantage over their smaller consorts since, being diesel powered, they were able to get underway almost immediately. Despite their initial shock at coming under attack, it was the Thai forces which opened fire first at 6:14, when the range had come down to 9,000 meters. The French responded almost immediately. Lamet Piquet fired at the dark shapes in the anchorage, and fired a spread of 3 torpedoes at 6:20. One torpedo was seen to hit the coastal defense ship Siau Thea. Heavily damaged by the torpedo and gunfire, she headed for the cover of the islands, and was finally beached on the mainland. The torpedo boat Trad then became the Lamet Piquet's next target. She was heavily damaged, and also disappeared behind the cover of the islands, where she later sank. Fire then switched to the remaining torpedo boats, Chonburi and Songkla, which were rapidly overwhelmed and abandoned. Gunfire from the sloops finished them off at 7 o'clock. At 6:38 the lookouts on the Lamat Piquet spotted the second coastal defense ship, the Thongiri, at a range of 10,000 meters heading to the northwest. A running battle ensued with the fire of both ships frequently blocked by the towering islets. The fire from the Thai ship was heavy, but inaccurate. By 7:15 fires could be seen on the Thongiri, which then found herself engaged not only by the cruiser, but also by the sloops. Believing they had a better chance of hurting the smaller French ships, the Thai shifted their fire onto the Amiral Chana, which soon found 8-inch salvos falling around her. The Thongiri shifted fire back to Lamat Piquet after a salvo from the French cruiser put her after turret out of action. Soon she reached the safety of shallow water which the French ships could not enter for fear of grounding. But it all came too late for the hapless Thais as the Thongiri was burning fiercely and listing heavily to starboard. At 7:50 the Lamat Piquet fired a final salvo of torpedoes at a range of 15,000 meters, but lost sight of the Thongiri behind an island from which she was not seen to emerge. For the next hour the French ships patrolled the area, picking up survivors and ensuring their victory was total. At 8:40 Berenger ordered the squadron to head for home, but this coincided with the start of the expected Thai air attacks. Several bombs were dropped close to the Lamat Piquet, but a vigorous barrage was put up by the ship's AA guns, and further attacks were not pressed home. The final raid departed at 9:40, following which the victorious French squadron returned to Saigon. The French left behind them a scene of total devastation. The Ciautea was heavily damaged and hard aground on a sandbar in the mouth of the Chantabon River. She was later raised and repaired by the Japanese, survived the war, but was sunk by Thai shore batteries on 3 July 1951 during an attempted revolution. The Thai transport Chang arrived at Koh Chang shortly after the French departed and took the Thongiri in tow, but she eventually capsized that afternoon and was a total loss. The torpedo boats Trad, Chonburi and Songkla had all been sunk. The only survivors were the torpedo boat Rayan, the Manila Nong Sarai and the fishery protection vessel Thuathak. These three ships, which had been sheltering to the north of Koh Chang, wisely chose not to break cover and thus were not observed by the French. At a stroke the cream of the Royal Thai Navy, Standfast the 4 submarines, had been wiped out. The French were elated, for they had inflicted a defeat as decisive in its way as the Japanese at Tsushima. Their success is all the more notable when the difficulties of navigating and fighting in such confined waters are considered, and given the courage and tenacity which the Thai sailors exhibited during the action, a fact which the French were gracious to accept. In the end though it was all for naught. 5 days later the Japanese government offered to arbitrate in the search for a peaceful settlement, and soon confirmed the Thai annexations. Even this state of affairs did not last for long, as Thailand was invaded later that year during the attacks on Malaya, and was forced to return her short-lived gains to France at the end of World War II. HTMS Thongiri and her sister ship, HTMS Ciautea, were designed following the incorporation of the earlier Ratana Cassandra class gunboats into the Siamese Navy in the 1920s. The Ratana Cassandra class were British-built ships which featured 6-inch guns into turrets and light armor. Under Pleek Pibal Sangram's command, the Siamese Navy began a series of modernization efforts. Priorities for the Navy consisted of protecting the extensive Thai coastline, and coastal gunboats were viewed as the best resource. Several foreign firms from European countries offered a variety of designs, but in the end the Japanese company Kawasaki won the tender. The new vessels were basically larger versions of the earlier Ratana Cassandra ships. The ships were laid down at Kawasaki's facilities in 1936. And the first, Ciautea, was launched on the 21st of July 1937. The resulting battleships, as they were referred to in Siam at the time, displaced 2,265 tons, featured increased armor protection, protecting machinery and gun turrets, and were powered by twin diesels produced by MAN of Germany. Armament consisted of 4 8-inch, 203mm/50 caliber guns mounted in pairs into turrets. The Japanese 8-inch rifles were of the same type as mounted in early Imperial Japanese Navy heavy cruisers and the aircraft carriers Akagi and Kaga. The main armament had a maximum range of 24,000 meters, 26,000 yards, at 25 degrees of elevation. A tower above the bridge featured a gun director for aiming the main guns. Additional armament consisted of 4 3-inch and 4 40mm guns. The new ships were enthusiastically received by the Siamese Navy. Purchasing further vessels of the type was considered by the government, but ultimately it was decided to purchase 2 Italian-built cruisers in 1938. Both ships were seized by Italy in 1941 before construction had finished, leaving Thonburi and her sister ship as the most powerful combatants in Siamese service. Both ships of the class had entered service by the time hostilities had broken out in Europe during the Second World War. Thonburi engaged a Vichy French squadron in the Battle of Koh Chang on the 17th of January 1941. The resulting battle was nothing short of massive defeat, as the Siamese ship was severely damaged by enemy fire and beached to prevent sinking. Thonburi was later raised, and attempts were made to repair the extensive damage, and continued to serve the Navy as a training vessel until being stricken in 1959. Part of her bridge and forward gun turret are preserved as a memorial at the Royal Thai Naval Academy. Sia Utea had a rather more unfortunate fate. She was sunk in 1951 during an attempted coup. Aftermatch. The French left behind them a scene of total devastation. Thonburi was heavily damaged and grounded on a sandbar in the mouth of the Chanfaburi River, near with about 20 dead. The Thai transport HTMS Chang arrived at Koh Chang shortly after the French departed and took Thonburi in tow, before purposefully running her aground again in Limgop. The ship capsized in the shallow waters. The torpedo boat Chonburi was sunk with a loss of 2 men, as was HTMS Sankla with 14 dead. The survivors were rescued by the torpedo boat HTMS Raol, the Minalaya HTMS Nangsare, and the fishery protection vessel Thuathuk. These 3 ships, which had been sheltering to the north of Koh Chang, wisely chose not to break cover, and were not spotted by the French. On the other hand, the French sailors were elated, believing they had inflicted a defeat as decisive in its way as the Japanese at Tsushima, and had not suffered losses of significance, with only 11 of them killed. Their success is all the more notable when the difficulties of navigating and fighting in such confined waters are considered, and given the courage and tenacity which the Thai sailors exhibited during the action, a fact the French acknowledged in a Sagan radio broadcast. The French would never have the time to fully capitalize on their success. Fearing that any further action by the French would turn back the Thai invasion, the Japanese government offered to mediate a peaceful settlement. The agreement ultimately confirmed the Thai annexations of the territory they had lost to France earlier in the 19th century. Even this interim of peace did not last long, as the Japanese army invaded Thailand in December of that year as part of its attempt to capture British Malaya. At the conclusion of World War II, Thailand was forced to return all of its short-lived gains to French Indochina. Thonburi was later raised by the Royal Thai Navy. She was repaired in Japan, and was used as a training ship, until she was finally decommissioned. Her guns and bridge are preserved as a memorial at the Royal Thai Naval Academy at Samut Prakan. During the post-action investigations, the Thai Navy claimed, based on statements by Thai sailors and the fishermen around Koh Chang and merchantmen in Sagan, that heavy damage was seen to have been caused to Lamat Piquet and her squadron. The report claimed the crew of Lamat Piquet spent all of the following night repairing the damage. Such claims are not reflected in any French documentation, nor in the ship's logs.